All right, thanks for tuning in to more Inside Our Lads NFL depth charts as we talk Miami Dolphins football with Alain Poupart, who covers the Dolphins for Sports Illustrated. That's all Dolphins. Also been with Dolphin Digest. Is that 30 years, Alan?
1989 at 32, but who's
Yeah,
counting?
we're getting to that point. I know how it is. That's how I am with
Yeah,
my age. Probably how you are with your age too. Who's
yeah,
counting, right? What am I, 50? That's what I
exactly.
do when I go, I'm like 50. You don't know? It's like, I don't care. I mean, whatever. I know it's the
Yeah.
50s. So, all right, Alan. So, Miami Dolphins, of course, we did our show every week during the season. It was a fun season. But now it is about the draft and the offseason. And the Dolphins had a big offseason last offseason. We thought this was going to be quiet for the Dolphins. And for free agency, kind of was, but then the trades came and shook up everything in the NFL draft. So give me a chronological analysis of how you felt when you first heard the news of the trades.
Oh, I'm glad you asked it like that, actually, because the first trade comes in and it's the one with San Francisco. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, they got 2 extra first round picks and a third rounder to move down 9 slots. Highway robbery. Oh my God. I love that trade. It's awesome. Talk about maximizing the value of that third overall pick, which was, to me, was the whole point the entire time. I didn't care who they took, what position, whatever, maximize the value and getting all those picks. You cannot do that more. So I was like, great job, Dolphins. Then they make the move with Philly, give back one of those first round picks to move from 12 to 6. And I couldn't help but be deflated from a Dolphins standpoint. I was like, why? Um, and then I look at the totality of the moves, and then you go them going from 3 to 6. And if you go back only 3 years, the Colts made the exact same move with the Jets when the Jets wanted to get Sam Darnold.
Okay.
And what did the Colts get?
Quentin Nelson.
They got 2 second-round
Oh,
picks
okay.
that exact same year, and they got a second-round pick the following year. What did the Dolphins get for moving from 3 to 6? They got a third-round pick next year, and they got a first-round pick that they have to wait 2 years to use. If you look at
Yeah.
the total sum of the moves. So I'm thinking the Colts made out better than the Dolphins did. So from that standpoint, I'm like, again, hey, no, I don't really like it. I love the first one. I don't like the other two. And then yet another way to look at it is, I'm going to guess the Dolphins, it's almost a certainty, had a certain number of players targeted for 3. And since they're thinking it's going to be quarterback, 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 they could easily get their same choice of players at 6. So they didn't lose anything in that process of moving down. And in the process, oh, by the way, they picked up a future number 1 and a future number 3. So look at it from that standpoint. Then I like it. I like it back a little more, but I don't like it as much as I liked it when it was just 3 to 12 and
Yeah.
picking up 2 extra first round.
Because that's what initially, I was deep into the draft guide, which, by the way, this is it. This is the Arlad's draft guide from last year. It's going to come out April 9th. And I was deep into 11 teams. So I had my 11 team reports, and I was barely finding out and really just sticking to my teams of what was going on. And I would hear the Dolphins made the trade and so forth, but I really didn't do it in the sense of the way you did. You hear it, you analyze it, then the next trade. So I just looked at it. Oh, I know the Dolphins made a couple of trades. Let me see what happened. And then I looked at it and I was like, wait, it seemed like that was better. That's all they got. I thought that was better than that. But then again, they did move back to 6. And that's why I wanted to ask you it in that fashion, because that's I figured that would be the way that you felt, because it just seemed like they got such a great first deal that they must really not want to get out of that top 6 for a specific reason. There's definitely a player that's not a quarterback that they really want to get.
Well, it could be a couple of players because we don't know what Cincinnati's doing at 5. The assumption is it's going to be Trevor Lawrence at 1, Zach Wilson at 2, quarterback at 3, whether it be Mac Jones, Trey Lance, or Justin Fields. Now Atlanta at 4 is kind of a little bit of a wild card. because they could pick Matt Ryan's successor. They could also dangle the pick in a trade.
But they won't be
And so
picking
the
a wide
possibly
receiver if they pick.
Correct. And then at 5, LSU's been. I thought Penei Sewell all along would be the guy because they need to protect Joe Burrow. Now all I'm reading and hearing is Jamar Chase is their guy because Joe Burrow wants to be reunited with them. Well, okay, now that leaves the Dolphins at 6 with their choice of Kyle Pitts, with their choice of Jalen Waddle, with their choice of. I'm going to throw them out there. Even though personally, I'm not a fan of that pick at 6 because it's too high for my taste. But I know Devontae Smith's been thrown out there at 6. So if the Dolphins were looking, if they're going to be happy with any one of those guys at 3, they'll certainly be happy with any one of those guys at 6. But the other part of the trade also is Chris Greer a couple of years ago, I think it was exactly at the Combine, mentioned that this was a philosophy was he'd rather have 3 very good players as opposed to 1 maybe great player. Well, that's what you had when you were at 12, and you kind of like gave that up.
That
a little
changed.
Bit, so.
That philosophy sure
that
changed.
So, so my guess is they have their heart set on one of the guys that they are confident now is going to be at 6.
Yeah, and it is interesting because, like you said, Devonta Smith, his stock definitely has seemed to fall a little bit, and I don't know. I haven't done my homework enough yet to find out where he would possibly fit, but I mean, possible he could have been there at 12, right? It's possible.
Sure, but assuming that's who the Dolphins are targeting,
which probably
Waddle
means that they're not targeting him. Yeah, that probably means they're not. Then, yeah,
that's possibly because to me at 6, and I mean I know how awesome he was at Alabama. I get it and all that. I can't help but look at the guy and seeing a guy who's not going to last in the NFL. And even if I'm wrong, if I'm a GM, I'm not willing to gamble the number 6 pick on his durability. I'm just not.
You think he's going to be sort of like the way Desmond Howard was when he won his Heisman? Like he's a great college playmaker, but when he gets to the pros, it's a different story.
To me, it's more the issue of number 1, is he going to get injured
Healthy.
a lot?
Yeah, health-wise, yeah.
He's not built to take a lot of punishment. That's number 1. Number 2, I can't help but think if I'm a defensive coordinator, I stick my cornerback at the line of scrimmage and jam the hell out of the guy and see if he can beat press coverage like that. Okay, and of course, I hear the arguments for the Devontae Smith fans. Well, he did it 4 years at Alabama. Okay, well, Alabama and the SEC is not the NFL. I mean, I don't care how much we're going to tout the SEC. It's still not the NFL.
Does Tua have a relationship playing wise with either Waddle or Smith?
Yeah, with all of them. In fact, his magical coming out moment was in that national championship game, and it was Devontae Smith.
It was Smith, okay,
who was on the receiving end. Yeah. So yeah, but again, I've heard that mentioned as a reason to draft Devontae Smith because of the connection he has with Tua, which to me is complete. Well, no, to me is completely ridiculous.
That has to be like an icing on the cake kind of thing.
Correct.
Not a reason to go after a guy.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they pick Jamar Chase, let's say, for example, and it's like Jamar meet Tua, Tua meet Jamar, go practice a few times. Okay, you got a connection. I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
Again, if everything else is equal, sure. The fact that they've played with each other, even better, but should never be a determining factor.
Well, let's. All right. So, what do you think then at that number? Give me the number 1 position of need for the team right now. Before has it changed since free agency began? The number 1 need.
Yeah, in the sense that, well, by free agency, let's change it to off season.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
And to me, it has changed.
With trades, yeah.
It's changed because they released Kyle Van Noy after 1 year, and they traded Shaq Lawson after 1 year to get Benardrick McKinney, who's an inside linebacker. So basically, you've gotten rid of 2 edge defenders. One of them was a starter. One of them started, I want to say, 7 games and played more than 50% of the snaps. So right now, they're really thin at edge rusher. And to me, that has become the number 1 need. I know it's very possible the Dolphins will go wide receiver in the first round, but that's more because what they don't have is a true number 1 because Devontae Parker still remains somebody who you can't totally rely on because of the injury issues that keep popping up. But they have 12 wide receivers on the roster after signing Will Fuller the 5th in free agency who brings a speed element that was missing. And along with him, you have Parker, Preston Williams. You have two opt-out guys from last year, Alan Hearns and Albert Wilson, who could come back. You had Lynn Bowden Jr., who you traded a fourth-round pick to the Raiders last year to get as a rookie. So they do have numbers at wide receivers of competent, solid guys. What they don't have is that pure bona fide number one guy, which is why there's talk of that's who they're going to pick at number 6. But as far as to say that that's a bigger need than edge rusher, if we're talking purely what's lacking on the roster, no, I think edge defender is the number one need right now.
The thing that I've heard from everybody that I've interviewed has been when we're talking about the positions, the strength of the draft or the weaknesses of the draft early on, let's just say the weaknesses, say, of the top 10 would be exactly what the Dolphins need, though. The edge rushers are not looked upon as, hey, here's your legitimate top 10 edge rusher, man. You better go out and get him. This doesn't seem, I haven't heard anybody go, that's the guy. So that wouldn't make sense at 6 from what I've heard so far. Offensive line, which is still got to be something. And look, Hunt, we got to figure, is definitely glued in at one of the tackle spots with Jackson. So with that in mind, then it's about the interior of the offensive line. And I don't think there's a player in the interior of the offensive line that is going to go. The Dolphins could have stayed at 12. Let's just put it that way. So it's not going to be offensive line. It's not going to be edge rusher. So it kind of does leave wide receiver, doesn't it?
Or the Dolphins decide to look at Kyle Pitts as more than just a pure tight end and go in that direction.
That's true.
So that's why, to me, I think to me, of who's on the board, it's Pitts, Waddle, or Jamar Chase.
Yeah, and Pitts is definitely, because of what he can do at the position with his ability, which is rare, he makes more sense than, yes, Waddle's fast and et cetera, but you can get those guys every year. Pitts is a guy that just doesn't seem to come along very often that you would think, all right, yeah, I mean, just imagine you could throw out the tight ends that this team has and then put Pitts in there. That could be a big difference-making type of draft pick.
No question. And here's the other thing that could factor into it. I'm not saying it does, but it certainly would make sense if it did. The Dolphins had Eric Rowe, their safety, who's a former cornerback, basically cover tight ends man-on-man the entire year. Did a great job at a really good season except for 2 games. Travis Kelce and Darren Waller. Dolphins had to see that and maybe realize what kind of impact a special tight end can make. Mike Gesicki's a very good tight end, but he's not special. Kyle Pitts is special by every account, every indication.
Speaking of the cornerback situation, so Coleman now comes in because the secondary, you had mentioned a lot last year about how they wanted to build this defense very similar to, Flores had in New England, a lot of good DBs. That's why they went out and they spent money on Byron Jones, and they have Xavier Howard have a huge season, but they just went ahead and added another one in Justin Coleman. So this is even going to be a better unit, isn't it? Are they pretty set in the secondary now, or do you think, nope, if there's somebody in there with one of those second round picks, you can see them going with another corner, another DB?
I wouldn't be totally floored if they took the cornerback at 18, although I think the most likely scenario by far is that they're going to get their pass rusher at 18.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Whether it be one of the 2 UM players or whether it be Kwity Paye or one of those guys. But the secondary, as we all know, you can never have enough cornerbacks. And the other thing, the elephant in the room with the Dolphins is Xavier Howard and his contract situation. Again, we're still 5 months away from the start, 6 months away from the start of the season, so that hasn't materialized as an issue yet. But he hired a new agent. He saw Byron Jones pass him in yearly annual salary last year. And so the very, very high expectation is he's going to want a new contract. At some point, are the Dolphins going to start balking at the amount of money they're paying their corners? in which case now you're in the market, you're in need for another cornerback. Now the Dolphins took a cornerback in the first round last year with Noah Benogany, who came in as a raw project with a high upside. Well, he remains a raw project with a high upside because he didn't do a whole lot last year. And in the very little playing time he got after Byron Jones got hurt early in the Buffalo game in week 2, he looked like a kid who was overmatched and was not ready for that kind of
Yep.
challenge. The hope is still that he's going to pan out and become a good NFL player, but there's no guarantee. And if the Dolphins decide to keep with what they have at cornerback and he doesn't pan out and Howard's situation becomes untenable, then Dolphins have to move on, then all of a sudden cornerback is a major need.
Where right now, when you take what kind of scheme are the Dolphins running more than anything on defense? 4 down linemen or 3?
They're all over the place. I mean, it's
50-50?
more 3.
It's more 3?
It's more 3, but they're all over the
Okay.
place. I mean, sometimes they could have 7 DBs, 1 linebacker, 3 defensive linemen, 4-2-5. They run everything.
Okay. Yeah, just taking a look at their depth charts over here on my other monitor. And I remember Van Ginkel had one heck of an end of the season, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think that's going to be a big part of the team if he can pick up where he left off last season. But without question, it still looks like you said, it has to be edge rushers. Not only at 18, but I would think one of those other second-round picks too. You just got to get. The team should probably be looking at 2 pass rushers in their first 4 picks, possibly.
Well, they have Emmanuel Ogbah back, although they're going to have to make a decision on his contract status since he's scheduled to become an unrestricted free agent next offseason. There's also the possibility of them taking a running back.
Yep.
In the second round, maybe like a Javonte Williams, for example. The thing is, and this is where when I see mocks that give the Dolphins Najee Harris at number 18, I shake my head and I just don't see it, because the Dolphins last year, after they traded down from 26 to 30 with Green Bay, not one running back had been taken. 6 wound up taken before the second round. They all look good as rookies, and the Dolphins didn't bother with any of them. They went running back by committee. This year they signed Malcolm Brown in free agency to go along with Myles Gaskin and Savon Ahmed, who had their moments last year. And it's not a flashy group, and they don't have like a bona fide number 1 guy. So there would be nothing wrong with taking a Javonte Williams, for example, in the second round. But based on very, very recent history, that's not their MO. So the interior of the offensive line could be addressed in the second round. That could be one place for it.
And that would be right guard more than anything.
That's the question mark right now. They have Eric Flowers under contract. His contract is shaped in such a way that if he doesn't have a good year, he's an easy salary cap cut next offseason, but not for this year.
Okay.
So that becomes an issue as well next year if they move on from him. But the interior of the offensive line will need to be addressed, and center as well, because they lost Ted Karras in free agency after signing him to a 1-year contract, and they replaced him with Matt Skura, who they also signed on a 1-year contract.
That's true. Yeah.
So they'll be in the same spot next offseason. So possibly a Landon Dickerson or a Creed Humphrey in the second round, certainly a possibility.
The whole quarterback situation. The last time we spoke, there was this Deshaun Watson deal in the air, and it is funny how things have changed so quickly, because money would have been on. He's either going to be a Jet or a Dolphin, probably by sometime in the first few weeks of April. They have way too much draft capital. Houston can't pass on that opportunity. And then all these rumors started to come out, which is a completely different story, which is just so coincidental. It just breaks my head, but I don't even want to get into it. But it is what it is. And it's obvious now, though, that Miami is, well, not our problem now anymore. It's too bad, but it ain't. And the Jets haven't made that move like the Dolphins have, but you would also believe that they're not going to get involved. So do you think the Dolphins would have made the move if they could have, before all this bad news started trickling out of Houston?
in a heartbeat, and I'm not convinced that they will not revisit it if and when the situation clears up. They can't do anything, nor can any team around the NFL while the situation is still unsettled and that cloud is hovering overhead. But once the situation is settled and in a way that that doesn't affect his status moving forward, then I think you're going to see several teams go back and revisit that possibility. And the Dolphins certainly, I would think, would be one of them.
And how does there? So they have the 2023 first round pick now. That's two in 2023. Do they have multiple first round picks in the next 2 years, or just 3 in the next 2 years?
They have 2 this year, 1 next year, which is San Francisco's.
Well, they don't have theirs. They have San Francisco's next year.
Correct. Philadelphia has the Dolphins, and then they have 2 in 2023. Theirs in San Francisco's.
So they're going to have. So after this year's draft, they still have 2 additional first round draft picks over the next 3 years after this year. Is that correct?
No, they have one. They have 1 additional first round pick after this.
That's the 2023 first round draft pick.
Correct.
Okay.
But they also have extra picks. They have 5 picks. So I'm sorry. They have 13 picks in the first 3 rounds over the next 3 years.
So they still have
including
really good future cap space. And look, if at this point, if Deshaun Watson does get traded, no matter what, unless there is a complete, this was just, everybody knows it was a lie. He's exactly the guy everybody thought he was. He's streaky clean. Unless that happens, which I just don't think it will, that even if he comes out of this, all right, everything's okay. It wasn't as bad as people think. It was a civil deal. He'll get a few game suspension and everybody forget about it. That draft, the trade, Houston's just not going to get as much, or you would think that they would have before this. So
Correct.
The Dolphins have are going to have more than enough draft capital even after this draft now to make that type of trade if that comes about.
Correct. If you can get it done, it's going to get done.
Yeah.
But again, nothing happens until the situation is settled.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so far into the back burner. And at this point, the Dolphins are proceeding as though Tua is going to be their quarterback in 2021.
And Jacoby Brissett, very smart move to pick him up when they did with Fitzpatrick gone. Nothing negative about that, right?
No, it's a very solid backup. And there was no way they were going to keep Ryan Fitzpatrick because he wanted to move on. He wanted an opportunity to compete, which was not going to happen in Miami. And Jacoby Brissett, they got a guy, if he needs to get in there, he's good enough that he can win some games. So that works out.
The switch at punter, by the way, that's just a mystery on whether or not that's going to be a plus or a minus with Pilardi coming in. That's just going to be a gamble. I mean, could be either way.
If you look at their numbers, they're kind of similar. Okay. Career numbers with Hawk and Michael Pilardi, so not a highly consequential move.
Okay.
Not a big deal.
Right.
I think there was some inconsistency issues with Hawk and decided to move. But interestingly enough, they kept a lefty punter, so they went from one lefty to another lefty.
All right. And lastly, fans. How are the fans reacting to everything that's taken place over the last week?
Oh, I think it's nothing but a thumbs up for a lot of different reasons. Number one, I think my objection to the series of moves, I don't think fans are necessarily agreeing with that. I think they're more in love with the idea of having picked up extra capital to still get a guy that they would have considered a 3. That's number one. Number two, I think a lot of fans are thrilled that they're moving down from 3 solidifies the fact that 2 is going to be the quarterback in 2021, because the suggestion was out there, and I wrote that it was not far-fetched for the Dolphins to consider a quarterback at 3 if they did their evaluation and came to the conclusion that one of them had considerably better upside than Tua. That would have been the smart move. So that notion to me was not far-fetched, even though, not shockingly, I got killed for even suggesting it. And then, so the fact that they traded down from 3 to 6, that now the notion of the Dolphins considering a quarterback at 6 absolutely doesn't make any sense, because why would you have traded down? Yeah. So that's made a lot of Dolphins fans very happy, especially those Dolphin fans who seem to be more Tua fans than actual Dolphin fans.
Wow. Fan's a fan, though.
Fans are
Yeah,
fans, exactly.
especially once we can get them back in the stadium. So, and that's
All right.
another story to kick down the can for another show or
Mm-hmm.
for another time when we start talking about
Yep.
2021. But first things first, next time we talk to you will be after the draft, and then we'll get a good opportunity to run through the Dolphins draft picks and kind of put an end to the offseason because we're pretty much free agency and big trades pretty much done for Miami now.
I've learned never to say never with that team. I mean, they're not afraid to make big moves. That is for sure. Like for example, it wouldn't even shock me if they traded down from 6. I wouldn't understand the point because they probably wouldn't get as much as they gave Philly.
Yeah.
But just to say, would I say it's impossible? No, I'm not. Nothing's impossible. Like I said, they expect. But to answer your question, my expectation is they're done until the draft.
Okay. And free agent, there's no other players that they can lose right now. That would be significant.
Unless something happens, because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes with Xavier Howard.
Okay.
I don't know if his agent has already made the demand for a new contract. They've basically kept hush hush.
Sure.
My guess is whatever negotiations take place are going to be behind the scenes.
Okay.
And it's certainly not the Dolphins who are going to tell us that. So that's always looming. And if we wake up one morning and see the Dolphins have traded Xavier
Then we'll
Howard
know
to
why.
somebody
Yeah.
then we'll know
Yeah.
why, and we'll be like, okay, yeah.
But no UFAs. No UFAs.
No, they had 13 UFAs or 14. Some of the major they didn't have anybody of major consequence. They lost Fitzpatrick to Washington. They lost Ivan Gottschall to New England, but got Adam Butler back in what to me looks like a pretty even swap. And they got Butler for a hell of a lot less than Gottschall signed for in New England. So that to me is good. But outside of that, then no, they lost Matt Breida to Buffalo, and he was a non-factor. But they didn't have any like significant free agent. Let's put it this way: when it came time to talk about franchise tags, there was never any realistic possibility that Dolphins would use one of those.
Well, look, I mean, just taking a look at the roster right now and everything that we talked about with the team last year, and even though they didn't make the playoffs and just everything, there's just still should be a really good vibe with the way that this franchise is continuing to move forward. It does seem like it's been a positive offseason to this point. You never know until they start playing. But on paper, things look like they're headed in the right direction. We'll see how things go with the draft, and then we'll reevaluate and talk more about it after that. But yeah, I think thumbs up for Dolphin fans, and they're definitely heading in the right direction, or at least continue to head in the right direction. And I don't think that's going to change the next time we talk.
Well, yeah, and what I think this offseason as will finish being about is putting as many pieces in place to help Tua take the next step in 2021. Because ultimately, no matter what they do, if the offense doesn't become more explosive than it was last year, and that includes Tua picking up his game, then whatever else they do probably won't matter. So, but from the standpoint, the acquisition of Will Fuller was big. That's the one that clearly stands out right now. And my expectation is that they're going to use the draft to pick up another key piece like that, and then let's let it roll and see what happens.
And the first pick for the Miami Dolphins is going to be Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitts.
There you go. That right at the same time. All right, we're in full agreement. All right, so we'll talk more about that, of course, after the draft as usual. Thanks a lot, Alain. I really do appreciate it. You've done a great job filling us in with the Miami Dolphins, and we look forward to talk more Miami Dolphins football with you after the draft.
Sounds good.
Take care.
Looking forward
Go
to it.
Expos.
You got it. Have a good one, Greg.